Why do industrial trade shows look like they do? Industrial trade shows are commonly held in huge exhibit centers which are constructed for the purpose of hosting industrial trade shows. Trade shows are held by specific industry types, from the automobile manufacturers to X-ray machines. The latter probably showing up in medical trade shows, but you get the idea. Exhibit halls are outfitted with electrical as well as plumbing fittings so that the exhibits can quite literally stand alone, short of having restrooms. The halls have plenty of those. Here's a rough layout of what an exhibit hall might look like in perspective. What you're looking at are spaces laid out so that the industries can install their exhibits in the space. Most industries hire exhibit designers, like me, and exhibit manufacturers, like the company that I worked for, to construct their exhibits for them. The exhibit firms have crews of people who are responsible for getting the exhibit to the hall. After that, the hall has crews of dedicated carpenters who set up your exhibit for you and for the individual industries. All of this can be very expensive based on what city you are in and how heavy and complicated your exhibit is to set up. Very quickly then, the spaces are divided up into two basic exhibit types. Inline exhibits, meaning just like it sounds, exhibits are constructed in a line, along in a row. Here the lines show two types side by side, arrayed along aisleways. The other type of exhibits are commonly called island exhibits. The one being shown here is a space 40 by 40 feet. Most island exhibits begin at 20 by 20 and extend in size up to several hundred feet. These are usually for automotive trade shows where the entire vehicle will be placed on display, although machine manufacturing shows can become equally large. Imagine an entire factory section on display. Let's start off by defining what constitutes an inline exhibit and what are the rules that end up making them look like they do. Here is what an 8-foot high back wall looks like running down the middle of an exhibit space. Understand that this is an imaginary wall. Unless you, as an industrial client, do not pay to have a back wall constructed for your exhibit, one won't exist. However, for inline exhibits, this is as high as you can construct your back wall, no exceptions. The first thing that you, as an industrial client, would need to do is pay for a section of floor on which to place your exhibit. Usually, you're not purchasing the floor, you're renting the space from the exhibit hall. In exchange for your payment, you are able to set up your exhibit and gain access to whatever services your exhibit might have to offer, including electricity, plumbing. Some exhibits have water and other liquids, and the services that the exhibit hall carpenters and electricians to set up your exhibit. So then, this is the smallest space that you can utilize, a 10 by 10. Very quickly then, this is a 10 by 20 inline space, a 10 by 30 inline space, and a 10 by 40 foot inline space. Technically, these can grow up to nearly an entire aisle length, though most companies don't go beyond 60-foot inline exhibits before they go to the next exhibit type, the peninsula. We'll get to that here in a bit. First, there are some other rules governing what your exhibit can look like. This is what's called an offset. That is, when you're designing an exhibit, you cannot have anything higher than 4 feet tall any further out from the back wall of your exhibit that is the back 5 feet. This is what's called the 50% setback. Thus, when you have a 10 by 10 foot inline space, you have a box where you can go up to 8 feet high only in the back 5 feet of your exhibit, as these walls show. If you have two 10-foot inline exhibits side by side, this offset rule will make sense. By restricting the front 5 feet to 4 feet high, your neighbor cannot block the view into your exhibit. This is why when you see inline trade show exhibits, they look like they do. Here is what a 10-foot inline exhibit would look like with the offsets. And jumping past the 30-foot inline, here's a 40-footer. This gets us to the point where an exhibitor might make the next size jump, or the peninsula exhibit. A peninsula exhibit is just what it sounds like. It is a space at the end of an inline aisle, and it usually are set aside just for that exhibitors. This is a 20 by 20 foot depiction, but they can be as big as 20 by 60 or 80 feet, and they have different rules. Because the exhibitor has paid for the extra space, the size of their offset is naturally greater. They can go up to 16 feet high along the back of their exhibit, only dropping down to 8 feet in the front 10 feet of the exhibit that faces the opposing aisle. Not only that, but that 16 feet extends out to the edges of the inline's offsets. The idea being that if you've paid for this more luxurious space, you should be able to maximize your footprint. This brings us to our final type of exhibit space, the island. Is just what it sounds like. As indicated earlier, they generally start at 20 by 20 feet. The advantage of an island over a peninsula is that you can now gain the final advantage of trade show exhibit restrictions, and this is called cubic content, meaning that you can go up as high as the exhibit hall will allow you to construct your exhibit. Here it is shown at 16 foot high by 40 by 40. But as I've seen and designed exhibits which went up to as high as 18 to 20 feet in height, very often these exhibits will have second levels built onto them with private conference rooms or lounges on the second floor replete with beverages and food. Each of these exhibit types have their advantages and disadvantages as well as ranges of costs. Exhibits can be very, very expensive.